Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. In this episode, we are going to discuss Accurizing factory rifles and the difference between entry-level custom rifles and custom rifles made today. So this is going to several emails and some phone calls we've had with some customers since the Great American Outdoor Show, and I thought it would be a great topic to discuss. Probably because the main reason is a lot of it has to do with why we got into this business in the first place. So without further ado, thank you for joining us, and here we go. All right, so we had a couple great questions from customers that had visited us at the Great American Outdoor Show, as well as some emails and phone calls and conversations we've had over the last 2 weeks. And we're going to break this down into two segments. The first segment we're going to talk about here is about Accurizing factory rifles. So Accurizing factory rifles. This is one of those areas that we get a regular question on, maybe a couple times a month or a couple phone calls we'll get here and there. This is also something that we actually discuss at the Long Range Shooting School, not in huge depth, but more so as a warning to customers about going this route, the pros and cons of it, and what you should do before you even think about having it done, in the end, to try to save you some money. So we were at the Great American Outdoor Show, and one of the vendors there I noticed, I've known him for a long time. He is a gunsmith. I don't have... I don't want to say anything terrible, but I want to be honest. I don't have a lot of respect for the work that he does, as well as how he sort of sells it to the customer. And so I noticed that at the Great American Outdoor Show, he had a lot of factory Accurizing packages that he was selling. And I could see the people and hear him talking about what it would do. And I think in a lot of ways it sells hope to the customers that they can take the investment of a factory rifle and sort of turn it into something that's going to be that once-in-a-lifetime or keeper rifle. And in a lot of ways, for me to be completely open and honest, it's snake oil being sold by the guy in the covered wagon riding through town. There is so much dishonesty when people get into that if they don't do it the right way. And I have to be honest with you that even in a lot of the gunsmithing schools, they teach this as a very highly profitable thing to do or to sell to the customers because it's not Accurizing as you would think in the processes that are done. And there's always this get-out-of-jail-free card or a back door that they can wiggle through and say, well, it might be something just completely with the action or the barrel itself's no good. So they can do all of this work and you see little to no improvement. Or it's the placebo effect, and you just shoot a little bit better because you believe the rifle's capable of it, and that happens sometimes too. But here's the deal with this, and I don't want to dwell on this too long, but at the same time, a lot of this is why I got into gunsmithing and building my own rifles, because this is out there a lot. So right out of the gate, if you have a factory rifle, and it's a great way to start to get into long-range shooting, I've shot lots of Tikkas and Seikos and Savages, and through the years of my life, I've probably shot about every rifle we can think of, and they are actually very good rifles for the money that you spend. Believe it or not, they're good rifles. Here's the problem with the sales pitch that they give you when they say they're going to Accurize your factory rifle is they're going to take a Pacific Tool and Gauge crowning tool that goes into a Black & Decker drill bit. They're going to run it into the end of your muzzle and make it all shiny and look new again. They might put lapping compound on the back of your lugs, lap your lugs completely inappropriately just to make them shiny, to make it feel like you've done something. And they might go in and polish the chamber, do something silly to make it look shiny, whatever they do. But they're going to charge you $800 to $1,800 and something that might take them 30 minutes to hand it back to you. It's super highly profitable, and in the end, you wind up with a rifle that probably shoots no better and in some cases can shoot worse because The tools that they're using to cut the crown is not a single point cut. It's not cutting a razor sharp crown. It's not perfectly true and concentric to the bore. You're just getting a quick fix shoe polish finish on it that makes it look like something was done. So Accurizing a factory rifle isn't about fixing or getting your rifle to shoot great that doesn't shoot great now. Accurizing really started about taking an accurate rifle and making it shoot a little bit more consistently better. So if you're accurizing a rifle, you're actually starting to work on an accurate rifle to begin with. And this is what we talk about at the school. If you have a brand new rifle out of the box, we tell customers this all the time. Don't go and take it to the local smith and have him do all of this work. The reason being is there could be things potentially wrong with the rifle that, regardless of the work that he does, isn't going to change anything. So if you have a rifle that you like a lot and you're thinking about maybe having it quote-unquote accurized, the first thing to do is go out and shoot it and make sure it's a good to great shooting rifle to start with, because the things that they're doing aren't going to correct a lot of the things that make these rifles shoot poorly. You have to start with a good to great shooting rifle, and if it's one of those rifles, wow, this is a pretty good shooting rifle. I like this rifle a lot. Then at that point, accurizing it is going to help it shoot a little bit more consistently better than it would without doing it. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a real gunsmith put it in a lathe and dial into less than a tenth or so on the lands and grooves and cut with a tool in the lathe, single point, a crown, a real crown that's perfectly true and concentric to the bore, razor sharp edges, no dings and dents, and certainly not done with an adapter that goes into a Black & Decker drill bit that's shoved in the end of your muzzle. By the way, that technique is actually taught at some gunsmithing colleges. So it is. We got the sales pitch here with these quote-unquote accurizing tools that are all done with your action in a vise. So they'll break the action off and they'll run this tool in, and it makes your thread shiny, and they'll run another tool in and they'll touch the face of this, and then they'll run another tool in and touch the face of that. But it's done with hand tools and drill bits or drills, and it's not cutting anything concentric or true or fixing it. It's just repolishing surfaces and making them look all nice and shiny and handing it back to the customer with a 20-minute investment and charging them $400, $500, $600. And then on top of that, you get into the other parts with the crown. So if I can give you some words of advice, number one, never even consider doing it without a rifle you haven't shot first, because if it's a poor shooting rifle, don't waste any more money on that rifle. Get rid of it and get something that actually shoots pretty well that you're happy with. Then at that point, you have to weigh out the pros and cons. How much increased accuracy are you going to get with accurizing a factory rifle? A lot of times it's measurable, but probably not by much, and in most shooters' hands, they can't shoot well enough to see the difference. That said, if it's a damaged crown, for example, and you think that might help, well, then, of course, having a gunsmith cut a real crown, which should cost about $135, done in a lathe. So the rifle has to be completely torn down, put in a lathe, dialed in perfectly true, and then cut with a single point tooling, not with a Black & Decker drill. That will help if it's damaged, but start with a great shooting rifle, and accurizing is for accurate rifles only. So if the rifle is a good to great shooter already, then you can do these things, and that will help just increase that consistency and the level of accuracy and maybe improve the accuracy even slightly better. But it will not make a poor shooting rifle shoot well. And so snake oil, buyer's alert, whatever you want to call it, when these guys are selling this, what they're selling you is hope that you can throw money at this problem, that it's a factory rifle and it might not be shooting well and it'll go away. And in the end, it's really about how they manufacture the rifle and the expectations of the potential accuracy of the rifle to begin with. It's never going to be a rifle that's shooting 2-inch groups at 600 yards. Those rifles aren't designed to do that. So just buyers beware. He makes a fortune doing it, and kudos to him for being a good businessman. But on the same token, we get a lot of the rifles here. We don't actually bring any in anymore. When customers call and say, hey, I had all this work done to my rifle and it's not shooting well, can you take a look at it? And the first thing I ask them is who worked on it. and they give me the customer's name, and I say, I'm sorry, we don't do that here anymore. And we won't critique or look at any other rifle that was made or worked on by any other gunsmith. We just don't want to get involved in the middle of it. But every year, selling it and wow, I can take my rifle and just throw $800 on it rather than build a custom rifle or really, have it done professionally by like a gunsmith considered like Gordy Gritters. Gordy could take a Remington 700 and true it flawlessly and sleeve bolts flawlessly, and in a lathe cut the lugs and the face of the action perfectly straight and true, not with adapters, done with a drill. And this is what we used to do, and what got me into building custom rifles was all of these things. There was no fixes for it other than just learning how to be a great machinist and dial in and cut these parts the way that you want them to be cut. And then you had to open up the bolt bore raceway, true it up to the bolt body. Then you had to sleeve the bolts, which is adding metal to the bolt and then machining it perfectly straight and true in reference to the bolt face and the back of the lugs. And this used to take 3 to 5 days to do an action. And I built some great shooting rifles doing this in a lathe with 3 to 5 days of labor involved in it. The problem is it's very low return on the investment. It still isn't a custom action. It's still never going to be a bad action. It doesn't hold a real great resale value to you when you sell it because, let's just face it, everybody has an Accurized rifle. And so the definition is just all over the place, from Black & Decker drills to people like myself and Gordy Gritters who could go in and actually do a great job and build a great shooting rifle. So we decided that we want to stay away from that, the sunk cost bias, or you keep throwing more money at it, but the potential is that you're going to invest just as much money till it's all said and done doing a Remington 700 than if you were to buy a bat and everything made the way it's supposed to be from scratch. So ask the right questions. Be careful when people are offering this quick fix. It can help, and in some cases, like we talked about, with an accurate rifle, it can certainly help increase the accuracy a little bit, as well as the consistency in the accuracy. So you want that rifle to shoot that way every day, all day, and that's sort of the reason why you're doing it. But rarely will it ever make a average or poor shooting rifle shoot better or great. It's just throwing good money after bad. To go one step further than that, is we had a customer we were talking to this week, and he had asked this question. There's a lot of custom rifles out there that are coming on the market that are quote-unquote PRS quality. I guess they can still fall under factory parameters, but it's basically a $2,000 to $2,500 rifle. And if you buy it under this from a custom rifle builder, you can sneak into factory class, or whatever that modified class is, and shoot a better quality rifle than what everybody else is shooting. So you can sort of game the system. And you see a lot of these rifles coming on the market. It sort of started last year. Don't want to throw out any names. You can do your research and find them on your own. And the customer would ask, well, what makes the difference between a rifle like yours compared to a $2,000, $2,500 rifle? And then compare that to a factory rifle. And so my answer is pretty straightforward, is the rifles that you're buying at that price point of $2,000 to $2,500 are nothing but really expensive, inefficiently made factory rifles that will potentially cut your issues that you could have with the less expensive factory rifles in half. So the truth of the matter is you're still going to have half the problems that you normally would have with a factory rifle. They're still there. It's just now it's done in a much more inefficient manner to where the price is only higher because they can't make it at scale to keep the cost down like the big manufacturers can do. So let me explain this a little bit further. And I'm not ditching on these rifles, but again, I sort of think they fall into that category of, it's a little bit of snake oil in this one. You think you're getting a custom rifle, and in some ways you are. It's custom built, right? But you're not getting that last step that, they say 80% of your effort's wasted. It's the last 20% that makes the world difference, especially when it makes making custom rifles. I believe that. You have to do 100% of the work to get to 20% that makes the difference between a good shooting rifle and a great shooting rifle. If you skip any of that and you only do 80% of the work, the potential is that you'll lose that special one thing that made that rifle go from good to great. So when you take these rifles in this class, which I think it's a race to the bottom, is number one, a lot of them are using button rifled barrels. We won't build using button rifled barrels. There's reasons why, but they are using less expensive barrels. They're also using actions that the only reason they cost as much as they do is because they can't produce them at the efficiency and the level that someone like Remington, so they're more expensive. But it's no better than a Remington 700 or a Savage Action that you can buy off the shelf. Really, there's very little difference in the end quality or the accuracy of the potential rifle. To explain it a little bit better, like you take a custom action builder that's building these or supplying these actions for this level of rifle, they're saying in this factory class of 2 to 2,500. You have a custom action maker that's making 20 actions a day. Well, the reason those actions cost as much as they do, keeping that price of the rifle in that $2,000 to $2,500 price range, is because they don't make 2,000 or 10,000 a day. It's the efficiency of the system that Remington and Savage and all of them have that allow them to produce the massive volume at scale to drive the price down to get in that $700, $800, $900, $1,100, $1,200 price range. But the quality is almost the same. The only thing you're paying for different in that other action is it's just an inefficient way to make it. They can't make them in volume, so you're paying through the nose for their inefficiencies in making it. And we're talking about the inefficiencies of them making the action compared to a completed $800 to $1,200 rifle. So we're just talking about the action compared now to a completed rifle that cost $800 to $1,200 in the completed rifle itself. The same thing goes on when you get into the barrel. So let's think about it here. We're trying to make a custom rifle in a $2,000 price range, using methods that are completely inefficient when it comes to major manufacturing. And so there's only two ways to do it. You either cut quality or you raise prices. So they've pigeonholed this price range, and then we talk about barrels. So there are lots of inexpensive barrels that you can have made that are sort of custom barrels in the sense that they are not made by Remington or Savage or so on and so forth. But again, the same rule applies. The reason that Remington can produce an entire rifle for, let's just say, $800 to $1,200, which I find amazing, actually. I really do find it amazing that you can get a rifle made in that price range when you really think about everything that's involved in making it. But that's because they're making 600,000 barrels plus a year. That's amazing. I mean, we're talking about 50,000 barrels to 60,000 barrels a month. So their efficiency allows them to produce that quality of barrel and keep the price down in a price that a customer can truly afford, which is fantastic. But what you're paying for when you get into that price range of quote-unquote custom rifles and trying to compete in factory class is you're either getting rifle barrels that cost more, but probably are of the same quality of a Ruger or Remington or Savage barrel, but because their efficiency is so terrible, they're not making them in the volumes of these big companies. It's just simply the price is higher, but they're still cheaper than a cut rifled quality barrel, say for example from Krieger. So they're going with a less expensive quote unquote custom barrel that's probably of the same quality as a good factory barrel. And then you have the errors that can happen when they chamber it. Of course, they're making these things and trying to break this barrier, so they're going to chamber it as quickly and efficiently as possible. Same thing with the crown, all of the other parts and pieces. And in the end, you wind up with a rifle that, quote unquote, is a custom rifle, and it looks like a custom rifle, but probably performs about the same as a really good quality factory rifle. The other part with this too is when you get into the factory stocks compared to, these custom rifles, quote unquote, with these stocks that they're supplying them with. These stocks are in the $300-$400 price range. Some of them a little bit more for us as consumers, but they're not able to keep the price down like Ruger Precision Rifle is, where they're making hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stocks and keeping the price down, but they're of about the same quality. And just because they're the number one stock in whatever competition doesn't mean that means they're the number one quality stock either. In a lot of these cases, it's the number one given away stock to the people who are placing and winning. So this is advertising and marketing 101 to put yourself at the top simply by getting top level shooters your product to place with. And so you have to be careful on that as well. So to wrap up the podcast, and really what we're trying to say is, when you get into factory rifles, you have a certain level of expectation of what these rifles can do, and they do a fantastic job. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the quality of these factory rifles now and their capabilities compared to what they were 30, 40, 50 years ago. They would almost be considered bench rest quality. But be careful. There's a lot of salesmen out there that give you the pitch to Accurize it, and you're going to turn it into this custom rifle by them using Black & Decker tools and really charging you an outrageous price for really is what a joke behind the scenes by the majority of them. Not all of them. There are some gunsmiths that will tear the rifle down completely and put it in a lathe properly and do the work with good expectations. But usually those gunsmiths will ask you, is it a great shooting rifle before they touch it? If those gunsmiths really care about giving you a quality product, they're going to weed out the rifles that have issues that all the things that they're about to do aren't or probably won't fix or get rid of the problem. You can't fix a poor shooting rifle with doing these accurizing techniques. Accurizing is for an accurate rifle to start with. So the gunsmith will usually ask you those questions and weed out those rifles. Now, we don't do any of that here anymore, just simply because we know that the difference there is to what we're trying to do, and we've corrected a lot of the things that create the bad rifles or the bad shooting rifles to begin with, and with everything that we do with the action itself, with the ace and the barrels that we use and why. But just be careful. I find it on a personal level, I feel that if you're going to give the customer something and you're asking them to spend their hard-earned money on something, that you should be open and honest and give them the product that you're selling them and explain to them the pros and cons of what can happen, what might not happen, and really go over and review their rifle or what their rifle may or may not be doing at the time to sort out the problems and not just do the job and say, well, it must be something wrong with the action, or their action must be something wrong with the entire barrel. There's nothing else we can do. Worst case scenario, they give the customer their money back, but at the same time, how much time and effort that you've put in at the range and frustration. And so just be careful. I find that there's a lot of profiteering going on in that market. It's quick, easy money. And again, it's selling hope to a customer that, here, you throw this money at this problem and we may make it go away, and you're going to have a custom rifle with a factory rifle, or you're going to have a custom quality rifle while using a factory rifle. And that just simply isn't the case. And the same thing goes going one step above that. And the customer that I was referring to had asked, what's the difference between a $2,000 and $2,500 rifle now at this entry level top class dollar mark that keeps you in factory class and your rifles? And it's everything. And the only difference between that rifle at that price point and the factory rifle is the fact that it's just completely made in efficiency. If they were able to make those rifles at the efficiency level that Remington and Ruger and Savage can operate, they would be $800 rifles. The only reason they're $2,000 and $2,400 is they just can't operate at that efficiency level yet. And you're winding up with the same quality, quote unquote, barrel, just paying a little more for it. And you're winding up with an action that's, slightly better than a Remington. I don't know, probably not. I mean, we've measured a lot of them here that had the same slop and only one lug contacting. I mean, this is what happens when you manufacture. And if you take into account that they're doing it at least efficient as possible, and they're trying to stay profitable, so it's easy for them to shortcut things or not do everything exactly the way it's supposed to be done. And again, when you compare that to a custom rifle, I say this about everything in life is, if you do 80% of the effort to get a job done, you could still wind up as a complete failure. And whatever you're working on, whether it's building a house or a career or going to college or whatever you're working on in life, it's that top that last 20% or that last 10% of that 100% effort that really makes most of the difference. And in order for you to see that, it's that last 20% that really makes you successful. 80% of your effort will leave you at average on everything, and a lot of times leave you as a failure. It's the last 20% of the effort that you're putting in that will make you successful. It's that last 10%, that last little bit going from 90 to 100% commitment and doing everything right and making sure it's right that makes everything worthwhile. It's that missing piece. It's only 20% of your effort that truly makes from average to outstanding. But you got to do 100% of the effort to get that magic 20%. If you skip, forego, or miss, or sacrifice anything and start dropping from that 100% commitment to perfection, then that 1 or 2% that you shortcut in one area could just crash you right back down to average on everything. And so it's the last 20% that will make you successful. And I think that commitment to doing 100% of the effort to get that last 20% is key. And that's where you get into these custom rifles. There's no shortcuts. There's no speeding up the processes. There's no finding faster and more efficient ways because you're trying to race against the clock to increase your profit margins. There is right, and then there's everything else. And if you want to hold that line and have perfection in your product, then you can't sacrifice any of it. I find it, even like with everyone we deal with, when we go back to these barrels that some of these companies will use to get into this price point, is they can be using what we call B barrels, or barrels that were made by custom manufacturers that didn't make the grade to be sold on the open market as their custom barrels. And because they know that they're going to go into a less expensive rifle. So Krieger does not sell any barrels that do not make the grade, but that's not true with all of them. So you have a custom barrel maker that could be saying, oh, this one's isn't quite perfect, but it's still pretty dang good. It goes over here in this pile. And then eventually that pile gets sold off to a company that, hey, we need less expensive barrels because we're trying to produce this price point in a rifle. Well, here we go. We can save you $100 a barrel, and they'll probably shoot just as good. Well, is that what you're really paying for? Just as good. Probably just as good. And the word probably is going to be attached to that. So be careful with your hard-earned money. And I always say this, I think this is really important to throw out there. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I worked, 2 and 3 jobs my whole life. I remember being a poor police officer when diapers, daycare, and formula took priority over shooting. It's just that stage of life where you're young and, you're working your butt off. And at that point, I even owned a small business, and my shooting budget was a very, very tiny portion of the income that was coming in because we had other priorities in life. And that's really is just simply how it goes. And what I'm trying to throw out there is depending on where you're at in your stage in life, just be careful that somebody doesn't hook you with a sales pitch to dump in a lot of excessive money into a factory rifle, promising these things that probably isn't going to live up to your expectations. And then also the guys that are trying to pitch out these entry-level custom rifles, the difference in these entry-level custom rifles, in my honest, humble opinion, is the fact that they're just factory rifles made totally inefficiently and cost a lot more money than they should. And, I personally would rather see you buy a really good Ruger precision rifle, a really good Tikka, even a great Savage, with a good stock on it. There's in the factory world, there's getting to be a lot of really good quality stocks being put on some of the rifles, and there's a lot of really good aftermarket stocks that will make a huge difference. And I personally think that would be a better investment than having someone do their magic quote-unquote wizardry on your rifle for $800 to $1,600, and in the end get really nothing out of it that's measurable. So if you're in that stage in life, be careful. There's just a lot of marketing and sales pitch and hype that's really designed to make you feel like you're getting something more than what you are, making it seem like it's a really good investment. If I can just bump up to this, I'll have a custom rifle and not be shooting a factory rifle. Well, they really can throw a lot of money into these potential fixes of problems, and in the end, keep throwing more money at it because, well, you've already got $2,000 invested in this Remington. I'm not going to stop now. I'm not going to, no, let's take it to another gunsmith and have something else done to it, because now I've got $2,500 into it. So you get this thing called sunk cost bias that can happen, where you start putting more and more money into the rifle and you're not getting any more results out of it. But because you have so much invested in it, you don't want to stop. Same thing can happen with these entry-level custom rifles, is you take it back and maybe have a new crown put on, or have a quote-unquote pre-fit barrel put on it, and maybe that'll help, a different barrel menu. So you start throwing more and more and more money at it. In the end, you wind up spending dang near as much as if you would have bought a real custom rifle and had no stress or problems right out of the gate. What we try to do to make it a little bit more affordable here, and not that these custom rifles are super affordable, they're not. They're very expensive in every aspect of making them to assembly. But we require 50% deposit. The balance isn't due until the rifle is completed. Each one is sort of spec'd out to the customer exactly how they want it, and each one is designed to deliver. And so we can say this, just because of how much attention we paid to the details when we build these rifles, is that we've not had one come back ever. And so our success rate isn't 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 or 90 out of 100, and we've got 10 unhappy customers out of 100 that the rifles did not perform. That's not what we do at this level of rifle building. Our goal is to hand the customer a rifle that is what it's supposed to be, that will shoot the way it's supposed to shoot, and that the rifle is going to allow the customer to enjoy this hobby that they love to do, and a lot of times not be the limiting factor to their learning or their ability to stretch out the distance or shoot smaller groups or to go out and compete. Now at this point, the only thing they have to do is learn and grow as a shooter and learn to use that rifle to its fullest abilities. And that's really what we're trying to do. So I hope I addressed the questions in an open, honest answer that may offend some people and really upset some people in the industry, but there's nothing else that I can personally do other than be honest in my opinions. In the end, I just want to protect that, say that you work really hard for your money, and I know the value of a dollar, been there, done that, and I would rather see you take and put that money into your shooting fund to put more ammunition through the rifle and go out and enjoy yourself than to start throwing a lot of excess money at a problem that might not go away. Now, some updates on the video segments that we have coming up. So if you haven't yet, please check out our YouTube channel. We are going to do an entire series of what would be considered like an audio-video version of both our long-range shooting school and a book we've been working on. So for the longest time, I've been trying to work on this book called The Extraordinary Guide to Accuracy that sort of tells a story about where we came from and the things that we've done through the years to work on rifles to try to help make them better and shoot better and handle better, and changing the way that rifles are made, but then also incorporate in a lot of the fundamentals of marksmanship and things that we've learned with over a dozen years of teaching this on the firing line and competing. So what we decided to do, especially now that we have a little unfortunate downtime on our hands with coronavirus basically locking the entire state of Pennsylvania down, is we're going to turn this book into an entire video series. And I think personally, I like to read books. I think they're great to sit down and just dive into a subject and relax. But there are things in the book that you can't do. You can't show people how things work and give them that visual part outside of a picture that really helps explain a lot of these things that we're going to dive into. And so over the course of the next year, we're going to launch an entire video series going to be called The Extraordinary Guide to Accuracy, in which we're going to do both talking about and showing the things on the rifle that are important and why, sort of like what we did early on with this podcast, going into the fundamentals of marksmanship. We're also going to dive into the things and parts of the rifle that become really important to that consistent level of accuracy. So it just allows you to do your job as a shooter. You don't have to see these random flyers out there or scratch your head and wonder why that bullet went off somewhere it wasn't supposed to go and not hit the target. And then the other part of it is we're going to do basically about 100 to 150 video segments on our long-range shooting school. So for those that would like to see what we're all about, or basically what we would like to do is share with you everything that we've learned over the years and showcase the knowledge that we can pass on to you as a listener and maybe a subscriber to our YouTube channel, all the things that we've learned to help you grow and become a better shooter. So we're going to take what was working on as a book, and we're going to turn that into an entire video series. And so the book has turned into both this podcast, which was basically an audio version of me talking about the different subjects that were actually in the book. And we're going to turn that into a video series. That way we can show you a lot of the things that really do matter when it comes to shooting long range. So our first introductory video, we are working on it. It should be up within about the next 3 to 5 days. And then we should be seeing about 2 videos a week. And we're trying to keep them sort of short, about 10 to 15 minutes each. Just really high quality content, really good information, something that you can sit down where you're enjoying your cup of coffee and not have to worry about trying to allot an hour or two to sit down and watch a video. But we're going to do a lot of them. Some of them are going to be here in our shop, where we're going to go over a lot of the things, like, for example, the first couple videos, we have to cover some subjects for so many different reasons. And then there'll be videos in the field in which we're going to take rifles out, we're going to set cameras up, and we're going to showcase the things that we feel is important to both the fundamentals of marksmanship, the safety, and the operation of the firearms, and how to dial dope, and all of the little things that get involved into this to really, I always say that at the shooting school, we're very nitpicky when it comes to both teaching and instruction. So we really go overboard on all these really small details. And a lot of times you'll hear students say, well, gosh, that sounds a little overboard. But once they're on the firing line and start applying these things, and they start shooting, and they start seeing that level of consistent shot go down range that they've never seen before, that's what makes it happen. So I just give you a quick example here. We have some targets that we shoot that are for training purposes that has lots of different little bullseyes. So they're about the size of a peanut M&M to a regular M&M, somewhere in between there. And there are a total of 15 of these dots that are tiny. If you're hitting these dots, you're shooting quarter minute of angle. We have had students, a father-son team, for example, that came through, I believe it was in 2018, that both used school rifles. The son was only 15 years old. And by the end of the second day, we worked back on these dots again. And both the father and son team, with a bipod and rear bag, mind you, from the prone position, hit 15 out of 15 dots. That is incredible shooting. The fact that they were able to repeat the process of shooting and have the bullet go to a predictable spot over and over again without their fundamentals loosening up and them influencing the shot negatively and throwing it somewhere where it wasn't supposed to go, that's marksmanship. And I was so proud of them. I took a picture of them, and I did throw it up, I believe, on our Facebook page, or we might have even posted it up on our website there for a while. But they did it side by side, and one was 15 years old, and the other one, was the dad, of course. And I can't tell you how impressive. And for most shooters, if you put that target up, they would think it was a joke because, you can't be expected to hit that many small dots in a row. And there we go. We had a brand new shooter that's his second day of the long range shooting school, and he hits 15 out of 15. And that's attributed to these little tiny details that if you let these things go or they slip through what you're trying to pay attention to, they're the ones that come out, and all of a sudden you start to see a little flyer that goes a little left of the circle and a little right of the circle and a little under, and then all of a sudden crazy starts to set in because you're wondering what is going on downrange. So we're looking that this is going to take somewhere between 100 to maybe as many as 150 to 200 video clips that are all going to be labeled The Extraordinary Guide to Accuracy. So as you go on our YouTube channel, we'll probably have other posts in there, and we'll have other videos for fun. But if you're trying to follow along with the guide that we're trying to put up, and that's what to look for. You can find us at Wolf Precision Inc. Or Wolf Precision under YouTube, and you feel free to subscribe to our channel. Our first video will be up and running in about 3 to 5 days. We are working on them now. So thank you so much for taking the time for joining us here at the podcast. We really appreciate all the emails and comments that we get. And thank you for taking the time for tuning in. I really do want to thank you for taking the time to sneak on over to our YouTube channel and checking that out. We hope you enjoy the content that we're about ready to put out. It is basically the book that we were writing in video form, which I think would make a lot more sense for most shooters. And hope you enjoy it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot us an email here. It's contact@wolfprecision.net. Of course, our website's wolfprecision.net. And you're more than welcome to give us a call here at the shop anytime. Our number here is 814-262-7994. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.